Welcome to Candlewick Library. I'm Cheryl. Today I'm talking about the books I read in January. The first book I read, I actually started in December and I finished it up the beginning of January. It was for the Inklings group with my mom, and that was Sense and Suitability by Pepper Basham. I absolutely loved this book. I did not expect to like it as much as I did. I'd heard so many people talk about it, but I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. And then I did. It was so enjoyable. I loved the characters. I loved the side characters. It was great. It was such a good reading experience. I really enjoyed it. Then the first book I read for Epistolary January was Sorcery and Cecilia, or The Enchanted Chocolate Pot. This is by Patricia C. Reed and Caroline Stevermer, and this is told completely through letters between these two girls. I really liked the unique idea of this book, the way it was set in 1800s Regency era, and yet had magic woven through it, and it was like magic was a normal thing. So it was told through the two cousins. Cecilia was in the country and Kate was in London. Apparently, the story behind it is pretty cool that the two authors were writing back and forth. One of them's idea to do this thing where they would have a story where they would write and then they'd mail it, and then the next person would write back the next part, and then it turned into a book. So I liked that part of it. I liked a lot of the book. I did like some of the characters and the whole storyline in general. However, my one problem with this book was that I could not tell the difference between these two girls. If it had not been written in letter form where I knew where each one was and who they were dealing with in their storyline, they were so similar, and the voice actually felt so similar. So that was so interesting to me when I did realize how they had done it and that they hadn't even consulted each other about a lot of the things in it, that they just were making up their own story without having a plan beforehand. I was surprised because the two girls have very similar personalities, and they both are with an aunt that also is very similar to the other aunt. That was really surprising and very interesting to me, and I did enjoy it. I did not love it, but I did enjoy it. And then I read Wired Love, a romance of dots and dashes by Ella Cheever Thayer. This was the group read for Epistolary January, and I went into it thinking it was going to be told all through telegrams, like the whole entire thing would be in the telegraph office. And so I was kind of disappointed when it wasn't. Even though I'm fine with epistolary novels only being partial, I went into it with one thing in mind. But I did enjoy the story a lot. I really liked the characters. At the end, I did feel like it went on a little bit longer than it needed to based on what the story was. And I felt like it would have been really good as a short story. Like it would have been perfect because I felt like her writing was really good, the characters were really good. And I feel like maybe in a shorter story, it because it was already a pretty short book, but if it had been a short story, it would have been so tight, and I think it would have been even better that way. But I did really like it, and it was so interesting to me how there was a part where it talked about carrying something around in your pocket to talk to each other, and it felt like a prophecy of cell phones, and I was surprised. I didn't know how old it was when I went in, and so I was really surprised when I looked it up and found out it was over 100 years old, like way more than that. It was so old. So that really surprised me. Then for the journal entry prompt for Epistolary January, I ended up reading Dinotopia by James Gurney. And this has this guy's artwork throughout the whole thing, and it tells the story of this man and his son who get shipwrecked. They're stranded on this island that is this whole different world where dinosaurs live with humans. It was very different from what I expected, and I assumed that the people worked with dinosaurs as like pets and work animals only based on just some of the pictures I had seen and just my assumption, I guess. And there was some of that, but there also were dinos who had jobs, and they had their own languages and they were writing and communicating, and so that was very very different than what I expected, and I did like it, and I like the whole idea of the artwork with it and everything, but I'm not sure if I'm going to continue on with the series. I didn't end the book feeling like I couldn't wait to get to the next one, but I did enjoy the experience of reading it. Also for Epistolary January, I reread Authentically Izzy by Pepper Basham. I really loved this book the first time I read it, and I wanted to see if I still liked it, and I did. I really really enjoyed it. If you haven't read it before, it is a girl who is basically forced into a dating site by her cousin, and she doesn't think she'll meet anybody, but then she does end up meeting someone and corresponding with this person because they have a common interest in books. I really loved both the main characters, and I love the storyline. I just find the whole thing completely enjoyable. And the only thing I think I wonder if I'm the only one that feels this way or if everybody does. I don't know. I can't stand her cousin Josephine, the one that set her up on the dating site. And then Brody, the guy in it, his brother Anders. I I like everyone else, but those two characters I cannot stand. I get very irritated with them when they're in the story. Then I started to read The Red Pony by John Steinbeck. That was for my literature course and for the Read the Classics. I also didn't realize going into this that it was a collection of 4 short stories, not just one big story. And each short story involves the same people, the same family, but different things. But I actually did not get past the first story. It was the little boy that got this pony, and it was so graphically, the violence, it was just really sad. It was really, really sad at the ending. And there was some violence toward an animal that was pretty graphic. And then the death of an animal was very graphic. So I guess a couple of deaths of animals, and they were all very graphic. And I don't like that, and I have a very hard time with that. So I at that point I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep reading, and then I read some reviews that talked about the other stories in the book and that there are similar things that happen in those. So I just decided I wasn't going to read it. I love John Steinbeck. His writing is always so good, but I just didn't want to read any more of it. And then I don't have it with me, but I have a copy of Alice in Wonderland that has Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass in it. And I read both of those because I was taking a class from House of Humane Letters on Alice, writing up a curriculum for my daughter to read those because she's going to be reading Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix in the spring. And Alice in Wonderland is one of the books that has there's a lot of symbols in that Harry Potter of Alice in Wonderland. And so I really wanted her to read the books that would be feeding into Harry Potter before she gets to it, so that she would understand the allusions back to Alice. She's reading Alice right now, and I really enjoyed rereading those while taking that class because the first time I read them was a long time ago, and a lot of it didn't make sense and seemed silly and nonsensical in maybe not the best way. And my oldest daughter, when she read it, she was like, "This is genius," and I kept thinking, okay, I have to reread it because she saw something that I didn't see. And I mean, I did see it in some areas, but I didn't see it overall. And taking that class, I was able to reread it and see the genius and love it. So I did love both books. And then I reread Jurassic Park, which by Michael Crichton, which of course I loved. This was one of my favorite books. I would say that for me, I think of it as a 5 star, but it would just be a couple of points less than a 5 star just because there's not a ton of swearing in the way a lot of people would think of swearing, but there is God's name taken in vain. That is probably the most used version of swearing in this book, and that does bother me. I can read the book still, which I know a lot of people can't, and they would DNF it for that. If you can't read books with that in it, then you would not want to read this because it does happen multiple times. And so I would take it down just a couple of points just for that, but it still overall to me is a 5 star. I love this book so much. And I will be doing a very in depth, very spoilerful review talking about this book. And I go through all the chapters and talk about everything that happens in it. Like I said, very spoilery. So if you don't want to know what happens in this book, then you won't want to watch them. But that will be coming up very soon. And so I will talk more in depth then. But just know that I love this book. I've read it multiple times now and I love it every time. All month long, I have been reading Distilled Genius by Susan Branch. This is a collection of quotations from all over the place. And I really loved this. I would read one section of it every day until I was done with it. And I found that it's really cool because there is a wide variety of quotes in here. There are quotes from Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and even one by Hitler. And of course, it's not making Hitler out to be this, a genius, great person. It's just a quote that makes you think and you go, oh my gosh, this is from Hitler. And this is what he said about how you can control people. And so I thought that was really interesting because she has so many different quotes from so many different people all over the board of different, of backgrounds and kind of people. So it's a really good collection. And because I'm reading Michael Crichton books this year, it was fun for me to realize that there was also a Michael Crichton quote in this book. It was, "If you don't know history, then you don't know anything. You are a leaf that doesn't know it is a part of a tree." And so, yeah, I highly recommend this. Of course, I highly recommend everything from Susan Branch. I love her and I love her books in her handwriting. I think it's so fun to read them. They're just a delight to look at, let alone read. So, this was another great book. But again, it's not story It's not a cookbook or whatever like some of her other things are, and it's not the memoirs like my favorite ones that are back there somewhere. It is just quotations. So if you like quotes, you would like it. Then I had another DNF, and this one was a little bit more disappointing because it was a Michael Crichton book for my project. This is Next, and this is the one that I said I remembered. I felt like I remembered not liking it, but since I kept it, I must not have hated it. But this time I could not even get through it. So it is very gritty. There is so much more swearing than his books usually have. There's a lot of sexual content. It's not like an open door, like romance type thing. It's just, oh, this person has a prostitute, or this thing is happening. And it's not detailed, but it is still just there. And I just, the way people talk about, so what the way some of the guys treat women or talk about women, like I said, very gritty. And it deals with DNA and genetic research. And it is definitely, you can see what he's trying to do with it, where he's trying to show that can go very wrong very quickly and what it can do to people that are involved as far as like their ethics and everything like that. So I got to a certain part, probably about halfway through, and I was just, I'm not enjoying this. And so I skimmed toward the end just to kind of remind myself what happened. And then I remembered, oh, yes, it wraps up really quickly. I just didn't like it. And I went and looked at some reviews, and a lot of people said the same thing. I also saw my original review on Goodreads where I said it didn't feel like a Michael Crichton book, and I wondered if it was written by a ghostwriter. And I thought that's very interesting because it's true. Even the books that have come out after his death feel more Michael Crichton than this book did, in my opinion. But the main reason that I really decided to DNF it, I mean, the swearing was getting to me because it did feel like way more than he normally has, like I said. The other reason that I did decide to DNF it is that the fact that I did not like a single character. There was not one person in this book that I liked. And that is something where I'm like, why am I putting up with swearing and other things if I don't even care about what happens to anybody here? And now I'll probably get rid of it. Just since I know I'm never going to read it again, I have no need to keep it. So I will get rid of that one. A book that I'm reading that I'm going to be continuing on is Jurassic Park, The Ultimate Visual History. I read the Jurassic Park part of this, and there's going to be ones for the other movies. This is a behind the scenes look at the making of Jurassic Park, and it was really good. I really loved it. I lucked out because it is hard to find it at its normal price, but I found it on a lightning sale the day that it was happening and got it for its old normal price. So if you can get it for that much, I would recommend it. It's really good. I'm still reading The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs. I'm hoping that it will become more engaging. And then Operation Paperclip. I am continuing on with that. Again, a lot of good information, but I'm going through that pretty slowly. So those are two that I'm continuing on. And the last book that I read that I just finished is The Curious Inheritance of Blakely House by Joanna Davidson Politano. This book I've heard so much about, so many people that loved it, and I really liked it too. I did not love it as much as I thought I was going to because there were things that she wrote that I felt were repetitive. And then there were other things that felt a little bit unrealistic. But overall, I really liked it. It's probably a solid 4-star for me. I really liked it. I did not love it, more than anything else I've read. But I did find very interesting that the main character in this, when she was talking about the way her brain works, I don't know if I've seen a book that ever had that in it, that so much of what my brain feels like. If you've ever watched Gilmore Girls, there is a Christmas episode where Lorelai is talking about the path that her brain goes on, and it goes from one random thing to another. That is how my brain goes sometimes. And this was the only other time I've ever heard anybody describe it so similarly. Somebody said, you're sometimes you say so many words and other times you're so quiet. And she said, only on the outside. Inside, it's like the streets of London at coronation time. Utter chaos, all moving in different directions at the same time. Lots of yelling and flashes of color everywhere. And he says, what sort of celebration is going on in your head, Miss Forrester? And she said, there's an awful lot of thoughts packed in there, and they simply shoot around, bouncing around in my skull and building up like pressure in a pot. Sometimes they spill out. I'm glad I haven't a hinge on my head because opening it might prove explosive. And then a little bit later, she's talking to someone else and she is thinking about that person. And she says about her mind did not trouble her as mine did, teeming with so many wild and windblown thoughts that she walked into a door or missed entire conversations going on outside of her head. She was the sort that had one train of thought and it drove through like a steam engine, parting the chaos and accomplishing goals. Me, I had several trains, all zigzagging madly about at once. I'm not certain any of them actually reached a destination, and often they collided or sailed off the tracks entirely. I felt so seen. in that moment. My brain, I always tell my husband that it's on a computer when you have a bunch of tabs open, that's what my brain feels like most of the time. I just got so many tabs open and I have to like really concentrate to try to close tabs. That's why I have to use planners for everything. So those are all the books that I read this month. As any of you who've been watching me for a while know, I always pick a book for my favorite book that I haven't read before. And then I will give honorable mentions to anything that's a reread. So obviously the favorite book was Jurassic Park. So that's going to be an honorary favorite because I've read it so many times before. So my favorite book that I had not ever read before was Sense and Suitability. I loved it, like I said, and it was a great way to start the year and the month. So that will have to take the favorite book of the month. I would love to know what your favorite book in January was, and tell me if you did any books for Epistolary January.